Jason, as it is each and every week, the Lee Summit Town Hall podcast is brought to the good people by Budget Blinds of Lee Summit.
Budget Blinds!
Hey, they are the home
of our robot shade overlords. All hail.
All hail, that's right. Automated shades provide a safer environment for children and pets due to their cordless nature. Hey, and guess what? Those programmable features, they allow you to use heating or cooling only when you need it, maximizing your home's energy efficiency.
So your shade overlords will bring you energy efficiency and increased safety. It's better for all. Submit now. Resistance is futile.
Wow. I think they might take money back for the Star Trek reference. Go visit our friends at Budget Blinds right in the heart of downtown. Tell them Jason and Nick sent you.
All hail.
Hello and welcome to this Friday conversation edition of the Lee Summit Town Hall podcast. We're going to do things a little differently today.
It's a change.
It's a change. I brought Jason Norbury in on a Friday.
You allowed me to come in on Friday because usually when you record these, I'm outside the studio like banging on the door, begging to come in, and you're like, "No, only Wednesdays for you."
Well, I had to put the muzzle on you on Wednesday because we let Hubert Nath take over and just read one of his awesome poems.
I'm going to say this for the record. By all means, that was the right choice, but I'm still a little hurt.
Well, you know. I had Jason come back in because I thought it would be fun to finish out the last episode of this year, talking about some of what we think are maybe the favorites or the top stories from 2019. Just a quick little year in review for everyone as we look forward. And then coming up next Wednesday, we're going to look ahead and we're going to have a conversation about some of the big stories we're looking forward to in 2020.
Although I think, given the list that we put up here, there's a little bit of that in there as well. But I think also,
well, yeah, some of these aren't done. Some of these stories aren't done yet.
Right. So a lot of these stories aren't done, but we're going to move through that. So, Nick, why don't you start us off?
All right, I'll do that. I'm gonna start out with something I think this is an easy. It's a gimme, and it's near and dear to both of our hearts. Downtown Lee Summit Main Street celebrated its 30th anniversary this year,
and it did more than just celebrate that, which we did. We did a bit of celebration. We had a whole big 30th anniversary thing, but it did that. It capped it off by winning a national award, a Great Neighborhood Award from, I believe it's the National Park Service.
The Planning Association.
American Planning Association, my apologies. And there were pictures of the executive director, Donnie Rogers. Hi, Donnie. I know you love it when we mention you on air.
I kind of wish we had a remote camera so we could just like put it on him and make him be on air.
Yeah. But he was in D.C., got the award. There's now a mural on the side of one of our buildings downtown to celebrate that. It's a big deal. So not only are we've been doing this for 30 years in downtown, and I say we because both Nick and I have served on the board and have been downtown businesses involved in that whole process, and that's good. And downtown still is making progress.
You know, it's a marketing thing to call it the heart of the city because of the Hartley Heart and stuff, but it's kind of true. That this is the hub of activity. This is where a lot of things go. And if you're down here in the evenings, especially like a Thursday through Saturday, it is packed.
It is full of people. And honestly, let's be clear, it is the heart of the city because whenever you look at the city's marketing materials, they are not showing you the 470 interchange at Colburn Road on the cover of that. They're showing you downtown, and stuff around downtown is what really did this. And the downtown district is still recording increasing sales every year, despite there being sort of a national drop in retail sales. So our downtown continues to thrive and excel 30 years on.
There we go. Jason, I got to steal the easy one. What was a favorite story for you during the last year?
All right. Well, I'm gonna go bring us down a little, or at least from my end of things down. I think that there's some big, I think we'll call it housing stories from this last year. There were a couple of big projects that got rejected by the city council. One is the Alera project, which got rejected in early in the year, and then there was an apartment development proposal for an apartment development at Blackwell and 50 Highway that also got shot down. Both of these brought, one brought multifamily housing, and the other brought a different mix of housing to the area, and it was very clear that neighboring residents as well as the city council had a discomfort with those kinds of changes and shifts.
How could you forget the name of the body that sits up on the dais that we get to talk about every week?
Because those aren't the words we use when we're off air. And no, it just, but the city council did that as a whole. And I think there's some tension about that. Like there's an obvious need. We've had studies, and that predates 2019. We have market reports that the nature of housing is shifting, that there's a demand. The developer who proposed the Alara project and then the follow-up project that came in has noted that there is a gap in the market that they're trying to fill, and their attempts to reach into that gap have met with, I would say, a fair bit of resistance from the city council as it goes. So this is one of those stories. While these projects in question are not in the future, these kinds of developments, these questions that we're having about what's the right kind of housing mix? What price points do we need to be at? Are we serving, the whole community? Are questions that are going to be coming up again and again. And I guarantee you we'll be seeing this in 2020 and beyond.
Well, and one of them we did see come back. The Alara project came back in a different form based on discussions and feedback from both the public and from city council. So we're gonna stay on this. And I know, Jason, this has been a special topic for you since we started this 286 episodes ago, or whatever number we're at now, that you've wanted to talk about housing, and because of your perch on the planning commission, you've seen kind of that debate happen firsthand.
Right, and we are in a better place now than we were. 10 years ago. I remember when I first was sort of getting involved and lived in Lee Summit, there was a attempted recall of a city council person because they voted to put a moratorium on building duplexes. So we've had some, those conversations have been there. We're not quite to that level of fight anymore, and the ground upon which we're talking has shifted. But I think there's a long way to go, and I think that we haven't yet gotten to the point where we have answers about how Lee Summit as a community is going to address the future of housing and housing demand as we go forward.
We will keep an eye on that one, and I know it's a topic that we're gonna come back to throughout the coming months. I'm gonna bring up another kind of, this one's maybe still a little bit downer, but just I want to make note of that we lost in the community a former city council member, Diane Seif, a longtime member of the community and a member of the Lee Summit City Council, passed away last year.
She did. She did a lot of things in the community over the course of her life, but as she was on that last leg right before the election, she did cast a very important vote in that whole process about when to do the budget raise for the firefighters and the other represented groups, the police and the public works union, in that whole process about when that was. And you remember we had a lot of conversation in that was a couple of years ago now, but we had a lot of conversation about, when the right time to do that. Are we having those kinds of conversations? She seemed to be on the side of grant the raises now, that, and then at the very end, when the last vote before it really became a thing, she switched her vote and prevented that from going forward at that moment without taking the corresponding address for how to pay for it. Part of it is.
Right.
So that was a big vote, and it probably played some role in her loss for re-election. And then unfortunately, we did lose her this last year, and we appreciate the work she did for the city and for the community as a whole. All right, we're going to move on. I'm going to go to another housing topic because, hashtag stay on brand, right? But this one's a positive one. This is a good one. I think at long last, we finally got approval for and final financing and all the thing, and we're about to start construction on downtown apartments.
First, before the construction, the destruction. So this is the apartment proposal that is set on the grounds of what is now the former Lee Summit United Methodist Church, or the Summit Church, as they have rebranded over time. They moved out west. After the land was on the market for 6 years or something like that. Probably about that, yeah.
And it sold. This came through. There's been ever since 2004, there's been a call for more housing in downtown. The big question that came through this one, and I think that the step that was made is the the financing piece of this. They requested, because they have to build a parking structure on site to handle all of the cars that they're generating, will be generating. They asked for a significant amount of TIF and other kinds of tax incentives, which the city council really had never given for, especially TIF, for a residential development of any sort. And granting that was very contentious. It got voted. It had a recommendation of no from the TIF commission, so that required a supermajority, and then it just barely passed through. And we have one of our council members to thank, and he made kind of a point for himself at the end of that.
Well, and I think, Jason, we talk a lot about process on this show, and I think on that topic, we really saw how the process was supposed to work, and that included, like you said, it included the commissions that are appointed by mayor, it included the city council, it included public comments, and there was a lot of involvement at all levels to finally get through the end of the process, which was approval for this project to happen.
You go back even farther when this complex was first proposed. Their first proposal, although there was never, I don't think, pictures of it, was included the demolition of the historic church building there at the corner of 2nd and Douglas, and that met with a lot of resistance from the city council and the neighborhood, and people who love downtown and the historic nature of it. And they came back in with a proposal that kept that building, that piece there on the corner.
The nice thing was that didn't really take very long. Is that was a pretty quick, hey, we hear this voice, we realize how important it is, and they made the change and brought it back relatively quickly. That was not a slow process.
No, it was not a slow process. I mean, you could, you want to be cynical about things. You could say that maybe that was part of their plan to begin with, but they did. We had that public input at the very beginning. There was a lot of public input as that went along. We had lots of public input at the TIF Commission with their decisions that came forth with the interests that are represented there, and a lot of public comment at the city council level, where that stuff came through at that point as well. So it's a good piece, I think, pro and con, right? We had people on, I hate to use the phrase both sides, but we did have people who were in favor and against it. And it took, I think, a brave vote by the city council to override. It had required a supermajority, so we had to get to 6 of the 9 on the dais. And as I recall, the one vote that was in question at the back end of it was Councilmember Faith, and he gave I think a fairly comprehensive and I don't know, stirring's not quite the right word, but clear speech about what he thought about it and how he went through his process, laid that out there, and then cast the deciding vote in favor of the project as it was going through. So good on the city council and good on the city for working that through that process. And by the way, also, yay, downtown apartments.
Well, I'm going to stay on topic a little bit. There's another story that is related, because this project includes a piece of land across the street from the former church, which is now currently the home of our downtown Lee Summit Farmers Market.
Correct.
For a long time, probably as long as we've been talking about,
I believe,
adding residential, we've been talking about a new home for the farmers market.
You look at that 2004 master plan. There's a farmers market pavilion on it.
Right. So it turns out we are finally maybe moving forward with that. The Mayor Bill Baird, at his last State of the City address in September, publicly announced that the city is working to purchase land across Green Street from City Hall, and that will be the home of several things, but most importantly for me, the biggest part of the story, a new permanent home, bigger home, better home for the downtown Lee Summit Farmers Market.
Yeah, and this is one of those things on a personal level that I've been arguing and fighting for a decade, literally, as we've gone through downtown, and I think it's a really important piece to be come through. And I've been working, quietly in the background for a lot of that time frame, and stuff that I can't say out loud, couldn't talk about publicly as well. So it was good I think is a good sign, hopefully, that the mayor felt confident enough about getting this moving forward that he was willing to put that in the State of the City address. And he put some pressure on himself to make sure it delivers.
Well, I think that's one of the things that you and I have talked about both publicly in front of the mic and when we've turned off the mics, is that we were kind of waiting for somebody on that dais, someone, whether it's the mayor or council members, to step forward and kind of make that bold risk, right? To pull the trigger and say, we're going to make this happen.
And
the mayor did it.
right. And we are, once again, 6 years on from a bond issue to help fund some of that. And well, that money, I think, has all been collected at this point. So it'll be there for us when we're ready to go forward with it. But in the end, I think this is something that's really that's a really important piece.
This is going to be a fun one to watch because this will truly be, the plan for it is to truly be a public-private partnership. And the idea is that some of those pieces will actually be sold to private developers to develop different aspects of this hub of activity for downtown. It's going to have a performing arts space. There might be some more retail. There might be some more office space. There's been talk about maybe a little boutique hotel. So it's going to be interesting, I think, for us to watch and see how it's put together and what the development community's response to it is. I mean, let's be honest, that's where the money comes from.
In the end, some developer's going to want to write a check.
Right. So it's going to be really interesting to watch this process and then see it develop and finally see that new, better home for the farmers market and a true downtown performing arts space happen.
Yep. All right, we're going to move on. We're going to go back to one that's maybe a little bit less fun for everybody, but I think in 2019 we saw the outcome, I guess, of the first wave of the equity plan, and then the R7 school district.
I really didn't think this is where you were going to go.
Oh well, terminated the contract of yet another superintendent. Dennis Carpenter had his contract mutually terminated. We should put that in there, and they
technically it was a resignation.
Sure, we call it whatever we want to do. That let me put it this way: there was an agreement to make him not be the superintendent anymore, and some checks are being written, so we can call it whatever we want. There we go. Yeah, that's good radio right there. Nick miming check writing on there. So this is one. Look, this got, I think, and probably the most important story in my book that we covered last year was the breakdown of the whole process. There were racist things.
That's the best word you could use.
Right. There's a lot of pushback from the school board and some community members on the need for the equity plan or the focus of the equity plan. There was an election that sort of shifted the balance on the school board. There was literal actual racism flung forward from the dais. In the process of going through that, there was a lot of recrimination as a result of that. And then I think that was sort of the public facing of the breakdown that eventually led what I would call the sort of inevitable mutual end of the time for Superintendent Carpenter with the district.
The word that you used there, breakdown, I think that's what I'm going to keep focusing on. Is it was a total breakdown of the system, the process, however you want to talk about it, because I focus a lot on the school board, Jason. When you and I talk about the role of the board, and I think we forgot what that role was supposed to be, and in that when they pushed back with those questioning of whether the equity plan is needed, whether that mission is they forgot that it had already been included.
Right.
This was the plan all along. And so I think the train was derailed and we ended up talking about 100 other things that weren't even on topic. Does that make sense?
It does. And keep in mind, even with all of that, the equity plan
is still here.
Marches on. The consultants are still in their first year of doing work, and they've had a couple of sort of pronouncements of work that they've done as it's gone through that. And I think that the ongoing face of the equity plan, as well as another issue that's coming up here that we'll talk about coming through, is going to be one of the key questions that needs to be asked in the 2020 run up to the 2020 school board elections. Is there 3 of the 7 seats are up, and only as of right now, only one incumbent has filed for re-election. So there's some real there's going to be some significant potential for significant change in that, and those questions are the ones that are really going to be pertinent as we go forward.
And I will say this, I hopefully when it comes back around, because those questions do have to be asked, and it's going to be part of the election process, but is that we can maybe finally get around to a discussion of equity instead of spending all our time talking about equality and avoiding the real discussions, because frankly, I think there were a lot of people who were just too scared of being called a racist and that they couldn't get to the real conversations. And so we avoided a lot of things, I think, during this whole thing. So it was, I'm going to say it again, Jason, I'm going to repeat your word. It was a breakdown of process and conversation.
Absolutely. And hopefully, I think we've learned something, you and I, through that process last year about how to cover these things and questions that need to be asked and followed up on. And hopefully we can help in our small role. I'm a very small role,
tiny
in the process. But I also hope that people have learned a little bit more about how to address these issues and be honest with them. They're not easy. They're not the simplest things to be dealt with, but they do need to be addressed.
All right, Jason, I'm going to get to the topic I thought you were going to go to. You had that little gleam in your eye that you were going to say something exciting. Instead, you went with the equity topic. Big news of 2019. This is back in downtown, by the way. Hand in Glove finally opened after I think it was about 12 years of development.
No, actually, I believe that Mr. Strother in the town of Strother actually had Hand in Glove as a restaurant or as a bar idea in the original downtown town of Strother plan in 1865.
I heard he didn't have the right marble.
So yeah, and it takes a long time post Civil War, to ship marble from Italy, the right part of Italy, over. But thank goodness that Shane Veritasi and family have put forth the effort to bring the original 1865 plan of Mr. Strother forward in there. And yeah, it took, I think even the Veritasi's involvement was something along the lines of 60 or 70 years long.
Right.
And really, congratulations to you guys for sticking to your vision and getting that open and bringing us, I think this is the key thing, for you and I, it's boozy coffee.
Yeah.
That we really need. And we're glad that it was a need I didn't know I had. And there it was, and it filled the need. A little piece of my heart.
So a good on you and a thank you to Shane Veritasi, Meredith Veritasi, for sticking to the historic vision, the first strategic plan of the town of Strother.
And I look forward to their next space opening sometime in 22-25. When they get that open for that time around. So get on the Veritasis and congratulations to Hand in Glove for getting open. And I think being kind of a runaway success for what it is at this point.
I agree. Hey, I want to make note of another small business owner here in town. If you guys don't know about this, Burnt Figure Barbecue, Jason and Megan Day, they're right here in Lee Summit. And Megan Day had a banner year all through 2019. She was featured in Sutherland Living Magazine. She was on the HSN Food Show. So, look, this is awesome. If you haven't had any of their food, you need to.
Go get it. It's worth it. And it's very good, well done, well packaged. And let's be clear, she has a face for television, unlike you and I. And so probably it looks good in magazines and on TV shows, which I'm sure is the only reason that you and I are not have our own TV show in magazines all the time, is because, well, who wants to look at us? I mean, to be honest.
That's true.
That's why we do podcasts.
Wait a minute. That's not true. Jason, I'm going to give it to you because there is one more, I think, huge story that is going to keep going. We alluded that some of these are going to keep going into the new year. I think this is the big one as we change from 19 to 20.
Right. The big one coming forward is the school board has had their initial meeting to discuss and get information on, and looks like in the first part of 2020 they're going to vote to put a very large, I think the largest in history that we know of in the history of the district, bond issue in the state. Wow, even bigger in the state, to build a bunch of new buildings, do a lot of rehab, a lot of things. We've covered this on the show before. There's some questions still as to what things they're going to put on the bond issue. That's not clear, at least 100% clear yet.
Well, and that decision won't be made until January, until the new year. But I think the fact that the initial ask was made and we kind of knew it was coming, that makes it a big story for this year.
We know that there's that piece out there, so it'll be interesting to see how that comes along. But that bond issue is coming, and I think that's going to really, really, really drive the conversation around the school board elections as well. So there's going to be the election for the bond issue that we'll all get to vote on, but there's also, I think, that will have a huge impact on the school board elections and the school board's conversations as it goes forward. And so we're going to dig into that and we'll see that. But there's a lot of stuff in there, including, right, built into this is the concept that they're going to move the sixth graders out of the elementary schools into the middle schools as they build that fourth middle school coming in. They're aiming at 22-23 school years. So
right, and we'll dig in and talk more about the details and maybe a little analysis on how the move would affect things, or could affect things is probably a better way to say it. So we'll get there as we dig in, but that's another big story coming out of 2019. Jason, I realize I lied.
You did. You misled our audience.
There is one more major headline from 2019, and
I don't think we have not sold this enough. I don't think we understand, the people understand how important and ongoing, right? This is perhaps maybe even a perpetual story. This is a story that will be with us.
Oh no, it's going to be decided.
We are going to come to a decision.
There will be a conclusion made, a major conclusion, and look, we all know what the answer is going to be. Made. I'm hoping we can have this done by the end of April. But Jason, somebody dared tell us that you were wrong.
I started this.
Well, that's true. But some friends of the show dared to say that we were wrong and have started a food fight.
And we will.
So here's the major headline.
We will win.
Tacos versus burgers. What's the higher ceiling?
I mean, clearly, tacos. I mean, we are unabashedly Team Taco.
Well, that's true.
And I'm not saying, remember, this is the key part here. I'm not saying burgers are bad. I'm just saying as a food form, tacos have a higher ceiling.
Well, I'm going to say this. It is the more versatile of the foods, right?
Right.
You can do more. You have more options. The ceiling of greatness is higher.
Uh-huh.
But I understand that there are three people.
Heretics.
Three, by the way. Three that I have found that are on the burger.
Heretics.
We're going to have it decided. So stay tuned. We're going to keep this up. Stay tuned. And keep those boys from Fossil Forge and Local Foundry in line. Let them know they're wrong. But we're going to have this decided, and it's going to be a public battle.
We're going to taco Sherman through their Burger Georgia.
That's what I'm saying. That's going to happen in April, so stay tuned. The fight will continue, and the fight will be won.
All right, there you have it. Those are at least about 10 of our top stories, including some really, really important information about tacos. From 2019, y'all have a safe and productive holiday, and I know you'll hear from us again before the first of the year, but do have a healthy and happy new year as well, and we wish the best for you.
We will talk to everyone on Monday. You have been listening to Lee Summit Town Hall, a Link to Lee Summit podcast with hosts Nick Parker and Jason Norberry. A proud member of the Fredcast Network, you can subscribe to this podcast on most of your favorite podcast apps and catch us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for all the news, analysis, and conversations on the Lee Summit community. Connect with us on Facebook at Link to Lee Summit or on Twitter at LS Town Hall.